Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. Today we are at one of the most iconic, sacred, and sobering pieces of Huntsville real estate, Maple Hill Cemetery. And today we begin a 2-week series titled, What You Decide About Jesus Matters Forever. Today we're talking about the heavy stuff, death and the return of Jesus. Both death and Jesus are coming. We don't know which will come first, but both are coming. We don't think about such things until some crisis comes. On the evening of November 22nd, 1963, an audience sat in a London theater watching a play. As part of the performance, an actor walked onto stage holding a transistor radio. Now, if you're too young to remember transistor radios, picture listening to a radio station on your smartphone on speaker mode. For the sake of realism, the script called for the actor to have the radio tuned to a real station. So, in the background of the performance, there was playing a live broadcast complete with commercials, music, or whatever happened to be on that station. That was in the script. What was not in the script, however, was a news bulletin. In the middle of a scene, loud enough for everyone in the theater to hear, an announcer broke in on the radio with a live report. Today, the American president, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. The audience gasped. The actor, realizing things had just taken an unanticipated turn, hurriedly turned off the radio. But it was too late. In an instant, the audience forgot the play in light of news from the real world. A bulletin from the outside shattered the atmosphere inside the theater. So it is for us. We go about our daily lives, and then suddenly there comes an interruption. Someone very close to us is diagnosed with a terminal illness. We are diagnosed with a terminal illness. There's a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and the policeman asks, "Are you the parents of?" Or we watch planes fly into the World Trade Center, or the CDC says pandemic, or there has been a mass killing again and again. From time to time, our routine, our normalcy is shattered. Our mortality hits us. We realize that we aren't going to be here forever. We consider that there's another world beyond us and that what we see is not all there is. Let's talk about that. First, let's talk about death. Many of us would like to escape the idea of death or outrun it. We go to the gym or to aerobics. We jog and eat bran muffins. Don't get me wrong. I want to postpone my date with death as long as I can. Not so much that I eat a lot of bran muffins. Let's not be ridiculous after all. But I love life, and I want to enjoy it here as long as I can. John Archibald is a journalist here in Alabama. His father was a Methodist pastor both in Huntsville and Decatur. John wrote a book, Shaking the Gates of Hell, in which he talked about his dad. He talked about the day his dad was in a rehab center in Decatur. John's dad was old and very ill. But John Archibald's father wasn't ready to give up his fight for life. His faith was strong and he was not afraid of death, John Archibald wrote about his father. But he loved this earth and the people in it. Archibald's ill and aging dad declared, "Heaven's my home, but I ain't homesick." I love that. Heaven's my home, but I ain't homesick. Oh, now some of you will remember an old gospel song, Beulah Land, that says, "I'm kind of homesick," referring to heaven. Well, I'm kind of homesick, maybe, but I really like Reverend Archibald's attitude. I love life and the people in it, and since this life is finite and eternity is, well, eternity, I'm in no hurry. And yet I know I'm going to die. We all will. I don't mean to be morbid, but unless Jesus returns first, there's going to be a funeral or a memorial service, and you or I will be the guest of honor. People will get all dressed up and come. Folks will say nice things, we hope. Maybe they'll sing our favorite songs. A few will gather at the graveside, much like these, under a tent in wobbly chairs, and after a brief service, folks will meander away. Some wiping their eyes. At some point, the family will gather for a meal, maybe provided by the church, and they'll tell funny stories. Some folks will make a contribution to the church or some charity in our memory, and we will be gone. James 4:14 is right. Your life is but a mist that appears for a little while and then is gone. Honestly, I'm not trying to depress you, and I'm not trying to scare you. It's just healthy to remember that one day we'll breathe our last. As Charles Poole wrote, it helps us to live with a healthy sense of urgency and an appropriate measure of insecurity. While hanging on to life is certainly appropriate, it is wise for you and me to consider our mortality, that one day we will die. Psalm 90 says remembering that makes us wise. The only way you and I won't die is if Jesus returns first. So let's talk about that. One of the primary teachings of what we call the New Testament is that Jesus will return to earth. In the cataclysmic conclusion of history, in God's time, Jesus will return to earth as a conquering king, and history as we know it will come to an immediate and dramatic end. Now, I know there are lots of people who've pointed to so-called signs that Jesus' coming is near and have floated some rather wacky predictions based on those signs. So let's talk for a moment about so-called signs of Jesus' return. Philip Yancey wrote about being on safari in South Africa when his guide, Lawrence, saw a sign. Lawrence knew the signs of African wildlife, but this was a different kind of sign. They were driving along when suddenly Lawrence, the guide, pointed to something. Not an animal, but a plant, blooming with yellow flowers. "That is the weeping wattle bush," he said with a serious tone. "It is very important to my people." Lawrence described past days when white South Africans brought in black workers from surrounding countries to do the dangerous and back-breaking work down in the smoldering gold mines. They saw their families only 2 weeks a year, Lawrence the guide said, at Christmas. The workers had no calendars or watches to tell them what day or month it was. But the weeping wattle, that plant Lawrence had pointed out with the yellow blooms, the weeping wattle blooms in December. So when those men who were forced to labor 50 grueling weeks out of the year saw those weeping wattle blooms, their hearts were filled with joy and anticipation. Soon they would see the ones they loved and they would rest. Life is hard and so much bad stuff is happening. We can understand why so many followers of Jesus look for signs of His return, like the African workers looked for the blooming of the weeping wattle plants. Granted, there do appear to be signs, like 2 Timothy 3, which speaks of the last days when, and I'm quoting now, people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful and proud. That portion of Scripture even says one of the signs of the time is that there will be men who will, and I'm quoting again, worm their way into homes and to gain control over gullible women. That's talking about abuse. Sounds like today's headlines. Makes one think. And yet, let's be careful about reading too much into the so-called signs. There are lots of folks who've taken the Bible's images far beyond what they were intended to communicate and have made some rather wild predictions. It's best to be cautious when it comes to predictions about the end of time. Like Yogi Berra said, predictions are hard, especially when they're about the future. Still, I can't fault those who look for the signs of Jesus' return. I can't blame those who look like the African gold miners looked for the blooming of the weeping wattle bush, for signs of rest and reunion. I understand the longing that people have that Jesus come, and one day He will come. One day He who gathered the little children around Him will gather His people from the four corners of the globe. One day He whose birth only a handful of shepherds would attend will see every knee bow and every tongue confess, some out of panic and some out of worship, that Jesus is Lord. One day Jesus will come and make things right. In just a few minutes, I'll be back to talk about stars falling on Alabama.
Surely your goodness and loving kindness will follow me all my life. Surely your goodness and loving kindness will follow me all my life. You are my shepherd, I shall not want. When you are my shepherd, I shall not want. Surely your goodness and loving kindness will follow me all my life. Surely your goodness and loving kindness will follow me all my life. When you are my shepherd, I shall not want. You are my shepherd, I shall not want. Even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. Even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. And you're a good father, you'll never leave me, you never forsake me, you never forsake me. And you're a good father, you'll never leave me, you never forsake me, you never forsake me. And you're a good father, and you'll never leave me, you never forsake me, you never forsake me. And you're a good father, and you'll never leave me, you never forsake me, you never forsake me. When you are my shepherd, I shall not want. When you are my shepherd, I shall not want.
This is my friend Susan Blevins, and she's the owner of the Toy Place in 5 Points in Huntsville. Thanks for letting TV Church come here today.
Well, thanks for coming in.
What better job to have than work in a toy store? You make children happy every day.
I haven't worked a day since I opened.
That's a great way to put it. A great way to put it. Well, Susan, Travis is talking today about we carry on with our life, get in our routine until something stops us in our tracks, gets our attention, and makes us focus on our mortality. And that happened to you.
Oh yeah. When the pandemic hit in 2020, I was I knew that it would not be good for me if that was something I were to catch. I can see where people have gotten really sick from this, even after having gotten used to it and all the treatments and things. And basically, I tested positive on a Tuesday. By Saturday, I was in the bed and didn't want to move. And by the next Tuesday, I'm like, I probably need to go into a quick care just to get checked out. And they put it on my finger and said, you need to be in the hospital. And I'm like, okay. Wasn't planning on that, but okay.
Well, that was a wake-up call.
It was a wake-up call. They come in the next morning and they're like, well, pathology came back and said you have squamous cell carcinoma. And I'm like, oh, okay then. The smoking caught up with me. In the hospital bed, I'm still very sick. Couldn't really even walk. And so I couldn't, I mean, it was hard to even get out of bed. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, God, this is what we have. This is the hand we're dealt. I'm not going to bargain with you. That's kind of tacky. But let's take this and use me. Just use me. Use me to spread the message, whether it's being a bad example or being a good example. I'm comfortable with either one. I've been both in my life. Just show me what to do. And after that, I wasn't afraid. It's like, okay, well, these are the steps I need to take. It's not a death sentence, but I need to pay attention. In the meantime, I'm dealing with all this, running the toy store, doing kind of everything. Mentally, I'm kind of thrown for a loop. I'm not focused. I'm just kind of like, okay, get through the day, get through the holidays, get through everything else. January, it's kind of like, that really just happened. This happened. I'm sick. I'm sick. They just did an ablation on a spot in my lung and I'm sick. Well, I'm not even casserole or meal train sick. I don't feel sick. And so then it's like, okay, well, I need to take advantage of this. I need to get out more and things, just, I need to start preparing my body for whatever comes ahead because I'm still getting treated for the cancer. And, it's just been a journey. When I look back, I see God's hand the whole way. And so I'm not afraid, but I'm doing what I can do. I'm doing, taking care of what I can control and acting as if, being very open with sharing my story.
How has this experience changed you?
It's made me not want to waste time because it's like, okay, well, I've got a finite amount of time. How am I going to do this? When I wake up and I'm like, oh my goodness, God made this beautiful day just for me. He doesn't want me to lay in bed watching bad TV. He wants me to get out and enjoy it.
And I love the t-shirt. There's a great big beautiful tomorrow. I love that. Thank you.
Oh my God. Oh, my girl.
One day we all will die, and one day Jesus will come. So what do we do in the meantime? There are lots of legends that attempt to explain the famous phrase, "Stars fell on Alabama." The late Catherine Tucker Wyndham suggested it comes from the night of November 13, 1833, when the skies over our state were lit with an unprecedented meteor shower. The otherwise darkened sky was bright with what she called blazing, darting meteors. Thousands of Alabamians, Wyndham wrote, thought the world was coming to an end, and they fell to their knees to beg for mercy. Many promised the Almighty they would give up their sinful practices, such as card playing, dancing, and cursing, if only He would spare them. Others jumped on their horses and tried to outrun the end of the world. In contrast, there's a great story from May 19, 1780. The sky of Hartford, Connecticut darkened, though it was noon. The State House of Representatives was meeting, and some of the representatives, looking out the windows, feared the end of the world was at hand. They insisted that business be suspended and that they be allowed to run home to prepare. But Colonel Abraham Davenport, the Speaker of the Connecticut House of Representatives, rose and said, The day of judgment is either approaching or it is not. If it is not, there's no cause for adjournment. If it is, I choose to be found doing my duty. Therefore, I move that candles be brought. When the end comes, however it comes, let's be found doing our duty. Rather than fearing what is to come and obsessing over it, let's just be faithful until death or until Christ returns. Let's join God in His mission to the world, His mission to those who are hurting, who are poor, who are suffering injustices, and to those who are lost without Jesus and without eternal hope. And then let God take care of what is to come. Details about the hereafter elude us. We simply know that our existence doesn't end when we breathe our last breath on earth. We also know that those who have a right relationship with God through Jesus can anticipate a perfect life forever with Him, while others face an interminable reckoning. Next week, we'll talk both about that eternal life and that interminable reckoning. Today, we simply face the fact that 1, we aren't going to be here forever, and 2, preparing to meet God doesn't have to be a frightening thing. It can be, in fact, our ultimate source of hope. John Gladstone wrote that one day he and a friend were walking down the street when they came upon a man carrying a big sign that read in bold letters, "Prepare to meet thy God." Gladstone remarked to his friend how tacky it is to try to scare people like that. But his friend replied, "Oh, you see prepare to meet thy God as a threat. I choose to see those words as a glorious hope." When you think about meeting God, does it feel like a threat or a source of hope? If our faith for forever is in Jesus and not in our own goodness, then we don't have to fear the hereafter. Prepare to meet thy God can be a word of wonderful, life-giving, serenity-inspiring hope.
"'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I've proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust Him. Precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that He is with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I've proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. Oh, how I trust Him. Oh, how I trust Him. Precious Jesus. All my life You have been faithful. been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. And Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more.
We hope you're enjoying TV Church, and we have a request for you. Would you consider hosting a group of friends in your home to watch TV Church together? You could gather and watch live at 10 a.m. Sunday mornings on Way TV, or you could record it on TV and watch it together anytime. You could watch together from your computer at tvchurch.online anytime. There will be no obligation to First Baptist Church of Huntsville. We produce TV Church, but you don't have to be a part of us to host this in your home. This is just an effort to take the church with a capital C where people are. You could be a part of someone's significant, holistic, eternal transformation right there in your home. Would you be willing to consider being a host? Email Pastor Travis at travis@fbchsv.org. He will get you on the email list to receive discussion questions for the week. Would you consider that?
The rackets, well, what I have are oversized rackets with an oversized shuttlecock, and it's also got a ball with it.